In this video, I'll provide you with a guide on how to beat all of the Duskhaven Season 2 Mythic+8 dungeons. Duskhaven is one of the best Vanilla Plus realms out there because it offers a lot of custom content, such as pseudo classes like the Monk, Stone Warden, Demon Hunter and Bard, but also because it adds a twist to familiar content. For example, you've got your standard vanilla raids like Molten Core and Blackwing Lair, but Duskhaven adds an extra boss to them, scales them for 10 to 15 players, and adds a heroic version with completely new boss mechanics, giving a fresh vibe to content which is, let's face it, pretty old and stale by now. In addition to all of this custom stuff, you can also participate in smaller scale content, more specifically the Mythic Plus system. If you've played retail World of Warcraft the last few years, I'm sure you're familiar with the concept. You or one of your party members gets a key which unlocks a specific difficulty for a certain dungeon, and you have to complete the dungeon in time to get a chest with loot at the end. A pretty fun system, and because it scales in difficulty and quality of loot, it's an excellent way for people to gear up if they don't have time to raid or just prefer to stick to 5-man content. Duskhaven does the same, but then for old school dungeons like Scarlet Monastery. Currently, we're in Season 2, and there are 5 dungeons in the Mythic Plus dungeon pool: Sanka Temple, Stockades, Shadowfang Keep, Scarlet Monastery Graveyard, and Cathedral. There are 4 difficulty levels: Mythic Plus 2, 4, 6, and 8. I've previously explained this system more in detail in another video, so check that out if you're interested. Completing all dungeons on the Mythic +8 difficulty gets you a mount, 105 gold, the title Keystone Hero, portals to all the dungeons, and there's a weekly repeatable quest for a token which you can exchange for really excellent gear. This is in addition to having the +8 dungeons themselves drop great gear as well, of course. First thing to note is what all dungeons have in common. The affixes Raging, Bolstering, Spiteful, and Searing. This basically means the mobs get stronger when one of them dies, they enrage, they spawn ghosts upon death, and they put a random healing absorb debuff on a target. Your healer just needs to be on point and spam heal that person, or it'll cause an inferno with AoE fire damage. These things will always be a factor and are basically a gear check. Your tank needs to be able to not die due to heavy hits, and your healer needs to be able to really pump out the heals. Alright, let's start with what is probably the most annoying and definitely the longest of the bunch. Shadowfang Keep has a lot of strong trash, which deal high damage and have a lot of debuffs and frustrating mechanics. I would strongly suggest bringing a decursor to this dungeon, it'll help a lot. Shadowfang White Scalps do a heavy damage blizzard interrupted. Haunted Servitors do an instant AoE Shadow Bolt, which deals pretty hefty damage, and especially if there are a few of them up, it can wipe your party. The bosses themselves are rather straightforward and easy. Rattlegore is just a standard fight. He'll put a bleed on the tank and then randomly leap to a target and deal heavy damage to the target. If that person isn't healed immediately, he'll most likely die. Apart from that, the main issue comes with the fact that there is almost always extra trash along with him, so you'll have to deal with them as well. Ghosts, Searing debuff, and so on. You can pull without trash, I guess, but where's the fun in that? When you're entering the kitchen area, the mobs here are bugged and will run under the floor. So your entire party needs to enter, which can be problematic because it's a pack of 3 Haunted Servitors. If they all cast their AoE Shadow Bolt at the same time, it's wiping time. Wailing Guardsmen knock you back and throw silences around, so put your back against the wall. Deathsworn Captain is cake. He'll just do a Blade Storm and summon some weak adds. Melee DPS probably has to run out, but it doesn't do that much damage and neither do the adds. After this boss, you're on the ramparts with some Wailing Guardsmen, which can knock you off and you'll have to run all the way back. Pull the first pack back inside, or just keep your back to a wall. Definitely don't tank them on the ramparts, as you'll get thrown off and have to run all the way back. It's a big noob move, which you can see me pull off here for demonstration purposes, obviously. When you get to this point, you can also do a little skip, avoiding a few of these annoying mobs. The trick is to just stick to your left when running across the roof. It looks iffy for a moment, but it's usually no problem. From here on out, there are Shadowfang Rage Dudes, which throw around short duration AoE fears, and put up Diseased Bite, which will turn you into a Worgen if it reaches a few stacks. There's another skip you can do when you reach the stairs here, but in my experience it's almost always faster and safer to just clear the 2 packs instead. Fenris the Devourer puts some poison on the tank, does a Furious Roar which reduces damage, an AoE Stomp, and Frost Damage Dot. The damage on the party can be pretty high, so it's mostly up to the healer, as is nearly everything else in this dungeon. The last boss, Arugol, can be pulled at a distance, so you can avoid all the mobs in his room. His main gimmick is casting a strong AoE Arcane Explosion, which you'll have to run out of. If he's tanked in the doorway, everyone can safely LOS it, there's plenty of time. He also does a Thundershock stun and throws frost bombs on the floor. Just don't stand in those, which can be problematic if you have a lot of melee DPS. Moving on to Circades, which is almost certainly the easiest Mythic+8 of the bunch. However, the trash can hit hard, and especially the AoE Thunderclap is something to look out for, as a few of those can hit at the same time. Ranged, keep your distance. As a tank, keep an eye on the Thunder Armor debuff. You don't want to be pulling the next pack with 100% of your armor gone. Targor the Dread is an Orc rogue, so he enrages and does Blade Flurry. Just don't stand in front of him unless you're the tank. Next turn War does a Shockwave, so again, don't stand in front of him. Pretty basic stuff really. He puts a Mortal Strike on the tank, just needs to be healed through or mitigated with absorbs. Numbing Shout slows your casting a bit, nothing to be done about it. Hamhawk is probably the hardest fight here because you also get some trash. I would suggest popping Bloodlust or Heroism and your cooldowns here instead of saving them for the last boss. Hamhawk is a shaman, so he does uninterruptible chain lightnings, AoE earthquake, and that's about it. You can deal with the adds first, or just cleave them all down if you've got good DPS. Dazzle Thread does AoE poison bolts. A cleansing totem is really useful here. He also throws down a smoke bomb, stunning people near him, and he does a ranged stun as well. He spell reflect, keep an eye on that. He enrages and puts Stormcloud on himself. Not many tricks here, just heal through the damage. When he dies, make sure you loot him. For some reason, the Mythic Season 2 quest requires you to loot the Defias orders of the boss. Just killing him doesn't count. Alright, moving on to Sanka Temple, which has strong trash mobs. The whelps knock you back, Nightmare Suppressors cast Fear and Sleep, and the big drakes throw shields and poisoned harpoons for heavy damage, and they do mortal strikes. Anyway, you can do the bosses in a loose order here, but I suggest starting with Jamalan the Prophet, he's closest. Just clear the pack to the left, well, the one guy, then have your tank pull the boss back here, so you've got space to move. The Prophet turns into a snake, increasing his damage. You can dispel this if you want. He also casts Deafening Roar, silencing everyone, a Flame Strike, instant casts Corrupted Flesh for quite a bit of damage on people, and most annoyingly, he heals himself. This cannot be interrupted and thus has to be damaged through. Sometimes it's even instant healing, not quite sure why. Having a healing reduction effect is very useful here. When engaging the Avatar of Hakar, he has a Bone Shield on himself. You'll need to damage through it or just dispel it. He casts Dark Breath, so just don't stand in front of him. In addition, he'll summon an ad. Just have your tank pick it up and face it away from the group or CC it. He'll also do mind controls, so CC that player or just kill him for fun. Damage on your tank can quickly add up, so healers beware. The Green Drake Hazaz costs a Poison Breath. This is easily avoidable by just not standing in front of him. The main thing to look out for is Poison Nova. This will most likely one-shot everyone who's not a tank, so move out of it or line of sight it around the terrain, or just negate it with Cloak of Shadows or Divine Shield and so on. He puts a Regrowth on himself. Dispel it as soon as you can because it heals for a bit. Finally, he also does a knockback, which is annoying when you're tanking him because it can knock you on a ledge, causing him to evade and reset HP. Shade of Aranicus does a few things. He casts a breath on the tank for decent damage, sleeps random people, dispel this or put Tremor Totem down, and he sometimes does Poison Bolt Folly. He'll summon Nightmare Suppressors, who will cast Fear on your party. Kill them or CC them. And his final and most devastating mechanic is Repelling Wave, an uninterruptible AoE knockback which severely damages everyone, stuns them for a few seconds while dealing damage over time. There are ways to stop Repelling Wave, such as Hunter's Explosive Powder, Monk's Leg Sweep, Fire Mage's Blast Wave, and Elemental Shaman's Thunderstorm. If you're lacking any of those, pop defensive cooldowns such as Ice Block, Bark Skin, Divine Shield, and so on, and you might live. As you can tell, many people just keel over and die. It's a lot of damage. Run back ASAP if you've died. The tank might survive long enough for you to get back and prevent a wipe. Moving on to Scarlet Monastery Graveyard, we've got a pretty short Mythic Plus, with which definitely comes with some dangers. The first half of the dungeon consists of Scarlet Zealots, who put very strong dots on people, so a magic dispel is highly recommended. Interrogator Vishas is basically just an extension of the trash, and he's accompanied by 2 other mobs, which means a lot of magic debuffs. If you can clear those, it's a pretty easy fight. If not, get ready to heal your ass off. He does a Rain of Fire, move out of it. Also does a Ray of Suffering on a random target, more heavy damage to out-heal. Once you get out of the dungeon and into the actual graveyard part, the dangerous magic debuffs are mostly gone, replaced by 75% healing reduction curses. Needless to say, I hope you can dispel those. Elevated from its status as just a rare mob, Fallen Champion is the second boss in this Mythic Plus, accompanied by 2 adds. The ads should die first because of the 75% healing reduction. Fallen Champion himself will do a Blade Storm, which doesn't really hit that hard. And it has a cast time, so you can easily move out as DPS. The tank will just have to eat it because he follows you around. He also does a cleave and a spell reflect. Don't cast big damage when he does that. After Fallen Champion is down, it's probably best to pull the trash from the crypt up to avoid accidental ass pulls. The final boss is Blood Mage Talnos. Fighting him where he stands doesn't give you much room to move, and with everything that'll start happening, you're best off actually seeing the spells, so pull him out of the tomb as well. He has a random shadow damage aura, which will keep on ticking throughout the fight. In addition, he casts an unavoidable AoE Shadow Bolt, and a pretty strong Flame Strike on the ground, and an uninterruptible Channel Blizzard. Just don't stand in those two. He also puts up a very strong dot. It's a curse, so if you can dispel it, please do so. Most of this will just have to be healed through. You'll have to keep moving during this fight, because you get a chilled debuff, which is stacking damage when you stand still, like Karistraza in the Nexus. He also puts a Frost Tomb on a target, stunning it for a few seconds, potentially in one of the AoEs. I am pretty sure he also has one final strong mechanic, but I haven't seen it in my past few runs. Perhaps because he dies so fast when people outgear it, or maybe he only does it on lower difficulties. Regardless, I'll explain it in case you run into it. He starts casting a frost circle on the floor, seen here, and once it's complete, it deals massive damage to anyone standing in it. Almost always a one-shot. As usual, don't stand in it and you'll live. Moving on to the last dungeon in the pool, Scarlet Monastery Cathedral. This dungeon has 3 bosses, is pretty fast, but has several one-shot mechanics, so you really have to pay attention here. And a timer which can definitely be unforgiving. And out of all the +8s, this is the dungeon you're most likely to run out of time in. The mobs hit hard and rage, throw magic debuffs and bleeds around. Not much you can do about it except hope your tank and healer are geared enough. Move up the stairs and you'll see the first boss, the Thunder Fury wielding Lord Lantiga. And 2 ads, a caster and a healer. It's best to dispatch of them first while kiting Lord Lantiga around, or keep them CC'd. He will cast Consecration, move out of it because it does hurt. Keep an eye on him at all times. Put him on focus if you're on the ads or if you're healing. His main gimmick is Radiance. If you look at him when the cast finishes, you're dead. So just turn around in time. Healers can probably just stay turned around the entire time. Keep in mind that if you die and you're running back, target him as soon as possible to see what he's doing, because Radiance has a large radius and can hit you even when you're nowhere near him. Also throws around Avenger shields. Can't easily avoid it hitting one person, but try not to stack so it doesn't chain. Lantiga is a paladin, so he also puts Avenging Wrath on himself. You can and should dispel this. Also does an AoE stun. Combined with Consecration and his instant cast Avenger Shield, this can be lethal. Not much you can do about that. Sometimes bad RNG just screws you. Around 30 or 20% he puts up a Divine Shield, so just survive until you can kill him. I've seen this boss destroy so many players. I wouldn't say he's difficult, but definitely a step up compared to most of the tank and spank fights in Mythic+. Clear the mobs in the Cathedral's right side. Pull them out to avoid wiping due to chain pulls. He'll face Scarlet Commander McGrane. He also does Consecration, move out of it. He'll randomly stun a target, but this can be dispelled. There's plenty of damage going around and his main gimmick is Throw Hammer. He'll, obviously, throw his hammer at a random target. This can be a pet or totem too, and it deals quite a bit of damage, able to one-shot Clauties. You can just line of sight it behind a pillar to avoid the worst of it. Final boss is High Inquisitor Whitemane, which is mostly a healer and DPS check. There will be a lot of damage in the form of Holy Novas, single target instant cast spells and curses, and your healer will really need to be on point. She also heals herself instantly, so your DPS will need to be high. A Mortal Strike effect is highly useful. However, once at low HP, she'll put Guardian Spirit on herself. If you kill her when this is up, she'll recover to 40% HP. Simply don't kill her, wait for it to wear off, then finish her off. That's it. You've killed all the bosses in Duskhaven Season 2 Mythic+8. Anyway, that's all I've got for now. If you've got any questions or want to add something I undoubtedly forgot to mention, let me know in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching and see you in the next video.